English translation. 613th contact Monday, the 16th of February 2015, 21:57 hours.
Here I am again, Eduard, dear friend. Greetings.
Ah, be welcome, and also my greetings to you, dear friend. I just got into the office because I enjoyed the TV show Melodies for Millions with Eva.
So I waited until you came back to your workroom.
Oh, I see. Well, unfortunately, it is again necessary for you to come here, because there has been something that probably required me to call Florina and explain to her what is going on, and that it would certainly be right for us to have the matter clarified by you, Quetzal and Zafenat. In my opinion, this is necessary because unpleasant psychological moments arise in those group members who are involved in the matter. As I already explained yesterday night, Florina, it is about that we publish the FIGU bulletins and open letter on our website. On the one hand, in the form of a normal PDF, which takes only a few minutes to put online, while on the other hand, also a HTML version is created, which requires several hours of effort. Therefore, I wanted to ask Zafenat for his advice about you, as well as Quetzal, who has been dealing with our computer technology in the same framework as Zafenat for quite some time. The question is whether we should keep both versions as before, or whether it would be better for us if we just switch to the PDF version and don't create the HTML version anymore, because this would mean much less work for us.
Do not worry that you have already called me again, for on the one hand, I am glad that you need me and you call me, and on the other hand, it was also my occupation and time that made it possible for me to follow your call so quickly, so that there is no problem whatsoever for me. Florina informed me in detail about what you told her about the PDF version and the HTML version, after which I called Quetzal and Zafenat to discuss the matter with them. Both felt that we should also consult with the panel on this matter, but both felt that it would be absurd and unnecessary extra work to create two different versions, because the PDF version would fully suffice and fulfill the purpose it was intended to achieve. Nevertheless, since it was just possible, we immediately convened the committee and dealt with the matter again in detail and thoroughly, after which we unanimously came to the advice that from now on you should only create and use the PDF version. Because an HTML version is much too laborious and time-consuming on the one hand, but on the other hand, absolutely superfluous, illogical, and nonsensical, because a PDF version is fully sufficient. The members who work with the cause can probably use their time much better than wasting it on useless things. So you are urged that our advice be promptly put into practice for your own benefit. It would be absurd and unreasonable, as well as inappropriate, not to follow our advice and therefore to act against it for illogical reasons.
To be honest, I thought it was crazy when the matter was brought to me, because publishing two different versions is superfluous. Because on the one hand, the PDF alone is surely enough, and on the other hand, 8 to 10 hours of work are needed to bend the HTML version right and to switch it on.
The matter has now been clarified, and according to our committee council, I have clarified what is to be done in this respect in the future. It cannot be that illogical, useless, and nonsense complicates the missionary work and overtaxes the group members performance-wise and psychologically. Just the idea from which this nonsense of the HTML version arose corresponds to an illogical thinking, and thus also to similar considerations that should not have come about in principle and rationally. So we were unanimous on the board.
I can understand this, but I also find that wasting time on something like this is also damaging to mission, because elsewhere time can be used for more useful things about mission.
I'm of the same mind about that.
But what about what I asked you about Whaley? He was admitted by unanimous decision as a provisional core group member, and now has 2 years to go before the final admission can take place. With regard to his professional skills, I informed Florina so that she could tell you everything about them.
Of course, Quetzal, Zafenat and I, as well as the committee, have decided and we have agreed that Ueli should be integrated into the relevant area of work in the computer and internet sector, and that it should therefore cooperate with the other members whose field of employment falls within the framework that corresponds to Ueli's capabilities.
That's what I think too, because it's probably what's only right and also serves the mission, whereby I think that he should be introduced to this task from now on. And I think it would be a good thing if Daniel Lutz were to direct it, if you are of the same opinion that I asked for.
We have tried to find the right division for Ueli into a certain working group, according to what our notes of the last 2 years have shown, whereby on the one hand we have come to the same result with our findings regarding the field of activity, as you have with your opinion. And on the other hand, we have also found that Ueli is to be placed under the activity custody of Daniel, because this corresponds to the most efficient possibility that we could find out from our notes.
Then that has also been clarified, so I now come to another question. Namely, how far the ceasefire or the strange ceasefire agreement will last in Ukraine. The way I see it, the whole thing will not be more than a ridicule and will not bring any real success and thus no end of the war actions, whereby many people will still die. In my opinion, in spite of the ridiculous Minsk ceasefire resolution, on the one hand, war will continue to be waged joyfully with all weapons, and consequently land and cities will continue to be conquered. While on the other hand, the so-called ceasefire will only be used to bring new war material and new combat troops to the battlefronts, in order to strike out again and with renewed vigor when the time comes. As I see it, the Ukrainians or the regular troops of Kiev will lose their fight against the separatists and will have to withdraw, because the insurgents are at an advantage in practically every respect due to Russian support, which will inevitably result in the insurgents finally splitting off from the actual Ukraine with their one territory and turning their attention to Russia, which is of course welcomed by the latter, because the new provinces mean a bulwark against the West and can ultimately become pure Russian territory again. And if Kiev is not satisfied with this fact and continues to work warfully against the separatists, then it can still crack violently. This is especially the case when the EU dictatorship or the USA are crazy enough to supply modern weapons to Ukraine, because then Russia would do the same with regard to the separatists. And it would also have to be expected that the Russian army would formally ally itself with the separatists, so that Russian volunteers could no longer be mentioned. What the EU dictatorship with the German Chancellor Angela Merkel at the head, with her blackmailing sanctions against Russia, can effectively afford can still become a widespread fire in Europe and a backfire, in which the USA could then also interfere, which on the one hand has allowed itself to be wrapped around its finger by this power-hungry Merkel, while on the other hand they take advantage of the Chancellor for their own plans for world domination, with which they also want to integrate themselves into the EU dictatorship. That the desired free trade area between the USA and the EU dictatorship is part of the way to this end is something for which all EU dictatorship powers are too stupid, megalomaniac and power-mad to even suspect the effective plans of the USA. Among all those who are conducted by the Chancellor, without them becoming aware of it, are practically all those who sit at the helm in the EU dictatorship and harass the EU peoples with laws depriving them of their freedom, etc., and force them under their thumb. If the leadership and politics of Germany are considered in relation to Angela Merkel, then there are frightening similarities at the time when Adolf Hitler built up his power and created groups around him, from which the Nazi system could emerge. This woman is on the one hand full of greed for power, and on the other hand so stupid that she doesn't notice that she is a naive political puppet of the US government, about which one can worry about this power-obsessed woman and her motivations so much and can also suspect something in the relationship, what she is really up to and what her real views are. I have copied the following about her from the internet, which is certainly unknown to many people and will certainly be of interest to many.
Angela Merkel is the first child of Horst Kastner, née Kazmierzak, and Herland Kastner, née Jentsch, born 1954 in Hamburg, according to unconfirmed sources in the USA, though, and gets the name Angela Dorothea Kastner. She has allegedly 2 siblings, brother Marcus and sister Irene. The father, illegitimate child of Anna Ryklika Kazmierzak and Ludwik Wojciechowski, is a Protestant pastor. The mother, a Polish Jew from Galicia, is a teacher. Her maternal grandfather was called Ludwik Kazmierzak, came from Poznan, and fought against Germany in the First World War. This is documented by a photo in the Polish newspaper Gazeta Wyborcza of her second cousin, her father's cousin, and her grandfather's nephew. The 79-year-old retired accountant Zygmunt Rykliki. The picture shows her grandfather in the uniform of the so-called Haller Army, a unit of Poles who fought against Germans in the French army.
To what extent the internet statements concerning Angela Merkel are correct is something I cannot judge from the ship. Of course, but it can be assumed that there are a few things that are correct, such as the information provided and so on. She is said to have a Jewish passport and to be a Zionist, which is not a crime, but perhaps can explain some of the reasons internet search. Angela Merkel Juden, why she is using her power to put the German people on the curb, whereby perhaps hatred and revenge can be a motive with regard to the Holocaust. Who knows? But this is only a possibility and not even an assumption. Therefore nothing can or may be derived from it, because it is only a train of thought and in any case not an assertion of fact, nor a racist remark of any kind or a conspiracy theory.
This is really not to be assumed, by which I mean that what you weigh up in your thoughts cannot therefore be spoken of as racial hatred, assertion, or conspiracy, but only as trains of thought. Unfortunately, however, it will probably be the case that those who know better and think illogically and unreasonably will still see things and behaviors in your words that correspond neither to reality nor to truth. With regard to the ceasefire in eastern Ukraine, I think that you are probably right in recognizing the facts of reality and that they also correspond to my opinion and knowledge, because neither one nor the other think of letting the ceasefire pass uselessly. Therefore, on the one hand, fighting is taking place now, not in full swing anymore, but somewhat restricted. But on the other hand, it is indeed the case that the fronts are equipped with new war material, whereby also new combat troops are called in. Moreover, it will certainly be the case that new territorial gains will be recorded by the insurgent separatists even. Now, due to the still existing fighting actions and that the regular troops of Ukraine will lose the eastern Ukrainian territories, and thus the separatists will not be defeated either.
Can't be any different.
That's the way it is.
Sure, but what do your linguists say about what I asked about the word rational? Again and again, as just with the correction of Block 13, reasonable is corrected. That is to say, by using an S, whereas I already learned in school that in connection with reason never an S is used, consequently rational is correct.
Yes, Florina has also passed on your question on this matter to me, following which I asked our linguists for advice, who confirmed to me exactly what you have just explained. In the concept of reason and its extension in any form, the letter S is never added. Therefore, rational is neither written nor spoken, but rational.
As I said, I learned the same at school with the teachers Karl Graf, Frey, and Gustav Lehmann. Teacher Fair never spoke of things concerning spellings in connection with reason. Anyway, I don't remember it.
But if you want to play chess with me now, Eduard, because I feel the need for it?
Undoubtedly, dear friend. So let's play chess.